What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about potentially Dewey's death and how I would like it to play out. So, I use the word potential, I'll use the words if and opinion. Those are kind of keywords, right? Because ultimately, obviously it's just a speculation that Dewey will die in this film. Now, I think it's pretty likely, which will end up going back to the trailer, most likely showing us too much, especially if Dewey does die. And I say that as someone who understands you have to do a trailer for a mass audience, and yet if he actually does die, I think the trailer obviously had several big spoilers in terms of that. But anyway, right? Either you think it, you don't, totally cool. Either way, I'm not here to tell you what to think, but what I am here to tell you is if he does go, how should it be, right? The emotions we're going to feel is obviously, I would assume, in incredible sadness. I mean, we've seen legacy characters of other franchises come and then be killed off and go, and some are done really, really bad. I would say Star Wars is the one that pops into my mind of just butchering as well as you possibly can in a bad way these legacy characters. So the first thing I think with Dewey is this movie needs to be arguably his best effort. I think he's really, really good in Scream 1. I like him in 4, although I don't think the movie really knew what to do with him at all. 3, he's in it a ton, but I don't think he's like the best character. And 2, I would say he's pretty darn solid. And so I don't really think it's impossible to beat or match his performance in any of the other ones, or even like the top tier of his game. But that's the first thing I would absolutely want out of David Arquette and Dewey throughout the movie, or throughout the first half of the movie, is that he is like, he's a very good character. He is maybe even the best character of that group up until the point that he dies. Now, I believe he'll die at the hospital. I really don't think there's any reason to assume he would die anywhere else, besides it. And so, really, I think one of the main things you have to do is have him go down swinging, as well as having some sort of like heroic sacrifice. I think if you can combine, and look, I'm not a filmmaker, okay? I never will be, and for maybe like the 0.01% odds that happens, right? So I'm not saying I know how to do it so well, or I can do it better than them, but if there's a way of kind of molding those two, or I guess combining those two ideas together, that's what I would want. Number one, I don't want him to go down like easily, right? And by the way, and I've said this on Twitter too, the killer who kills him better be like a stronger, like buff male, or they better have a good reason of how to, take him out. This is not like a male versus female. I'm not like certain words that people like to throw around so easily on the internet. I'm one for realism. So if Dewey, who is a pretty solidly built person, right, and a veteran at this, like a veteran of these killers, you know what I mean? If you're gonna kill him, again, two things. One, if you're gonna like just flat out outmatch him, you need to be, I would say, like, you'd honestly need to be Richie or Chad. And I guess, like, Wes is something we've talked about, too, right? I think, like, Wes would maybe be able to somewhat get close. If it's, like, Amber, who weighs, like, 80 pounds soaking wet, if she's the one to take him out, that will not be very, believable to me, so those will be some issues. However, that's not for sure a make or break, right? Because for me, I mean, that's one part of it. If you're going to win, like, a one-to-one, like, straight-up fight, now, yes, one has a knife, one has a gun, but it seems like he runs out of bullets, right? So he's technically only fighting. He has his hands. The other person has a knife. However, if you, again, combine the, being able to have him go down swinging along with some sort of heroic sacrifice, I think that would work. And if his job is to ensure that Sam, probably specifically Sam or even Tara, if his job is to just protect them, and he like gets in the way of like somebody's about to stab them and he gets in the way or something, like if it's like that, if he's caught off guard, whatever those options could be, those are all believable. So again, I'm not saying it 1,000% needs to be it's just one-on-one and the killer just gets like the upper hand because they're stronger or whatever. I mean, you could do that as long as it would make sense. And granted, they have a knife, so you get sliced or stabbed, a little bit, and all of a sudden now you are vastly weaker as an individual than you would be if you're fully, 100%. So, those are kind of things as a audience member, but also as somebody who I just think like loves the character, right? Wants the best for this character. If he's gonna go out, it needs to be believable, needs to make sense. And I mean, and then from like a character perspective, I do think like, having something heroic, like having him go out, not necessarily like with a message, but having him go out like doing something noble makes a lot of sense. Because obviously, I think one thing that's very, very safe is that the impact of his death is going to be respected and well done. I feel like I think the trails of it are there from what we've seen and what we've even heard. Like Sydney and Gale, like they're like on the hunt, you know what I mean? And I think Dewey's death would be something that would do that to them, where Sydney would just be like, oh, I'm done. And Gale would probably be, the same way, where it's like, we're going to find, we're going to go after him. We're not going to be the ones who get stalked. We're going to do the stalking. And I like that. And I think, number one, that also changes the movie and actually makes it pretty darn different than any of the other Scream. If they're hunting Ghostface in that final act versus the other way around, that's different than any of the other ones. And if Dewey's death is what does that to them, I think that's very powerful, and I think that's good. So, again, I think the repercussions are like what comes after he dies. I think I have easily the most faith in it. I also, I kind of have a lot of faith also, I guess, in the beginning parts too, like just reintroducing his character and having him help and all that stuff, kind of like mentoring the young kids. And then the actual hospital scene and the death stuff, obviously, like we haven't seen it. It's going to be a sight to behold when we actually see it in front of our eyes. And obviously it can go a couple of different ways, and I really hope they do it well. But I hope he goes down swinging. I hope it's not something, dumb. Obviously, they have to make it. This is like a sad thing. Even like with Randy, you have to make it where he's dead. He's dead. Because you're going to have always like fan theories of like, did he not make it? So like, sadly, I think you'd have to it'd have to be brutal. I'm not talking about like an Olivia style death. I don't really want that for any character, let alone like an OG character, right? But I think you have to make it very apparent that he's not going to make it. And you can do that through the violence, or you could even do it through when he's being wheeled out. Honestly, that is the hint, again, going back to the beginning of the video. If the Gale screaming in the trailer is to Dewey, number one, shame on the trailer. Number two, like that would be if he's like wheeled out and he's like dead, that's obviously he's going to be gone. So I hope for the best for the character in a way of like, well, he's going to die, but I hope they do everything really well with him. Also, one other thing, I'd love a scene with all three of them. I'd also love a scene with Gale and Dewey, which we know we're going to get. That's kind of why I say all three of them, because we know those two get it. I also, one specific request, I really want something with the Meeks children, with Chad and Mindy. I think it'd be really cool. And we've seen nothing, even like, I'm not going to talk about leaks, but the leaks that I have seen, nobody's ever mentioned it. So I don't know if it does happen or doesn't happen, or people don't think it's like of interest enough to like bring it up. But I would love a scene, because we know they're together. Like we know Chad, Mindy, and Dewey are on those couches together, like studying or watching or whatever, right? So we know they're together. I'd love something where he kind of not breaks down, but he acknowledges like he was there when their uncle, because Randy would be their uncle, right? He was there when their uncle died, and they tried to stop Ghostface then and they couldn't do it, so I'm going to work to protect you. I think him going down while protecting them would probably be the most powerful, considering the legacy. But in terms of the story and like the new characters, Sam or Tara, or I guess Sam and or Tara, right? That makes a lot of sense for him to go down fighting for. But I want that scene. I really hope we get some sort of thing where maybe he feels bad that like he, or I hope it doesn't really seem like they're gonna do that, because it's more about like him trying to help Sam, and maybe they don't even mention that with Mindy or Chad, but I would like that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. If you guys want to follow me anywhere else, I have a Twitter, I have a second channel. I also have Patreon and YouTube memberships. Links for any of those, if you want to follow me or support me, are in the description below. Thank you for watching, guys, and I hope to see you all on the next video.